Hey YouTube, Awesome Rider here. Welcome to my review for Power Rangers Dino Fury Episode 3, Lost Signal. So the premise of this episode is basically, just as Zayto is missing his home world, a signal comes in from somewhere in outer space in the same sector as Rafcon, so he's hoping that it might be something from there. We get a little bit of a flashback of him on his planet where he got this little Energem looking necklace. It also kind of low-key looks like a ring pop, but it's with his mom. First I was like, is that his mom or his girlfriend? But it's his mom, as confirmed later, and she gave him the necklace when he was becoming a knight. Again, this further confirms they're using the knight theme. I still see people saying they're not using the knight theme because they're alien knights, but it is the knight theme. But there was a nice little flashback of that. But basically, the machine they use to pick up signals is broken, and there's this super secret alien Jolly Rancher part that is broken, and they can't fix it, and they need to find a new one, but they don't know if they can do it on the planet. And at the same time, the Monster of the Week is doing this thing with hypnosis, where its eyes will, like, freeze people in place. The theme of the episode is basically signals. But when they're trying to figure out how to find a way to fix this, Ollie and Amelia both have different theories on how to do this. And Amelia immediately wants to go to a psychic, and of course Ollie channels his inner, was it Clement? The future is now thanks to science. It's really funny because as a person who believes in like everything, I even rolled my eyes when she suggested a psychic, and we get kind of like a comedic scene with the boss lady and the robot, and I'll give some thoughts on them later, but basically they go there, and she's initially seeming like she knows something about Zayto's life, but then Ollie runs a test, and he's like, look, me and Amelia are super in love, can you tell us about our future? And I thought it was a really good scene, because at first, again, I rolled my eyes at the psychic thing, but I also hate those skeptic characters, and so I was ready to be really annoyed at Ollie, but I actually really liked the scene where he pretended to be in a couple with Amelia to trap the psychic into thinking she was fake. So that's probably the most I liked his character so far, and I thought it was a really good and funny scene. But they debunk it, and then they go to a scientist for the signal, and that's when the monster starts attacking later on. And there's a cool scene where the monster's like, basically, I can freeze you, you can't, you know, fight me without looking at me. And Ollie and Amelia turn away from him and morph. And I thought it was a really cool, badass scene. I mean, they didn't end up winning, but it was cool the way they did that. I thought that was kind of smart. But then after that is when we get into the preview clip territory where they end up getting frozen and everyone ends up getting frozen because Zayto's kind of back at the base moping. And he gets frozen briefly, but Solon takes him out of it, and I guess Solon's not affected because she's a robot dino thing. I also keep finding it funny that she sounds like an old lady. Like, I didn't expect that character to sound kind of like an old lady. I also keep forgetting she's a robot dinosaur thing. I keep thinking she's an alien. But anyway, that's where we get into the thing that we saw in the preview clip this week where he daredevils it up. And as I mentioned when I talked about the preview clip, but in case you didn't watch that video, he had like a really badass line when the monster said to him, oh, you look like you're about to bust up a pinata. And he's like, I'm about to bust up something. And then when he starts hearing, he's like, yes! And the delivery of that like ruined the badassery of the first line. But still, basically the plan was you can't see him, but you have to hear. I was a little confused by it in the preview clip because I thought it had something more to do with hearing the signal, which I guess it did in a way, but you know what I mean. So there's a cool little fight scene there, and everyone gets unfrozen after he breaks it up. Ollie and Amelia save him just in the nick of time in this cool scene where they teleport in. And then this is where we're debuting the Megazord, because earlier in the episode, when Zayto's kind of just talking in the forest with Amelia, they talk about like, oh, Solon's trying to get the pink and blue Zords online. So when the monster grows big, Zayto temporarily goes in the T-Rex Champion Zord, but then the new Zords are brought online. We get a little bit of a sort of on-the-ground fight sequence with those two where they use like their powers and the powers of the keys to blind the frozen eyes on the monster. But then we get the official debut of the Dino Fury Megazord, and we take him out, and the day is saved. And then it was funny because there was no Geyser or Void Knight in this episode, and I was like, oh wow, I wonder if the whole episode is going to go without him. But he shows up at the end to take the Angry Putty, and the Rangers take it instead. And I was thinking, it's kind of interesting that Void Knight's plan can kind of in a way seem like Lothor's, just because he kind of wins either way. Like if his monster accomplishes their goal, great, but if not, then he gets another thing to charge up his machine. And it's kind of interesting that he still wins if he loses, and there's going to be kind of, I guess, a race for the Rangers to get the stuff. But when they put it away, I kept thinking, can Void Knight just break in again? Like, I'm not saying he'd be successful, but I kind of want him to try. I'd love for them to address that, because there's not a lot of Ranger series I can think of outside of the ones where they're like an officially known organization like SPD, where the villains know the base. That usually happens near the end of the series when they want to do like the finale base destruction. But I mean, he could just break in. I mean, they're gone all the time, you know, so I don't know. I'd like to see that addressed at least once. I just happened to think about that when they're putting it away. But it turns out the necklace that Zayto's mom gave him has the components or the gem or whatever needed to fix this part, and they use it to fix the signal. And the signal is coming in this weird language, and Sohan says, like, well, languages change over 65 million years. Maybe it's them. And he said, yeah, maybe it is. So we don't know yet. I definitely think it's interesting. I think this is queuing up a couple things potentially, because then after that, Zayto sends a message out to space saying, I'm the Dino Fury Red Ranger. If anyone's out there, please contact me. You must contact me! I thought that was interesting because that sets up potentially two different stories for the future. One of anybody responding to his signal, and us finding out what the other signal is, whether it's from Rafiki or whatever it's from. So I think that was kind of nice. I think they're doing a good job of setting up little bits here and there, but I thought this was a solid episode. You know, it didn't knock my socks off or anything, and I'm sorry I just used the expression knock my socks off. I didn't realize it was 1971. But I liked this episode. I thought it was solid. I think if there was any lesson in here, it was just don't give up, because Zayto was feeling like hopeless, and then he remembered what his mom said, and then it turned out the necklace was conveniently working for this. But one thing I'll give him credit for so far, again, being very, very cautious, is so far the lessons haven't been beating you over the head. They're kind of more integrated into the episode. Like this one about never giving up was not beating over the head with it, and last week's sort of teamwork lesson wasn't really your traditional, like, oh my god, you can't do anything by yourself, you need 5 people type of Power Rangers lesson. So again, being very cautious, because even some of the Neo Saban seasons would start off very solid and then they would eventually devolve into like just shouting moral lessons at you. So I'm going to be very cautious, but I'll say within these first two, I think they're doing a solid job at integrating a lesson, and it doesn't even really feel like that's the main point. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel like a lot of times in Neo Saban seasons, again, this could happen to this series too, but it felt like their almost main goal was the stupid lesson, and that's not what it feels like, at least in these first 2 episodes, so I'll give them props for that. I think it furthered some stuff with Zayto's character, and it also furthered some potential stories for the future. I liked the moments with Ollie. Just to give my quick thoughts on, like, we don't really have a traditional comedic duo. In some of the interviews, Simon Bennett said he's going to try to spread some of the comedy around to the Rangers and the other cast. But I think if you had to peg 2 characters so far that are kind of designated to that, it's her boss and the robot lady, and they're honestly fine. I mean, it's too early for me to say. I haven't really laughed at anything they've done, but they haven't bothered me too much. I haven't felt the humor leaned too much towards only physical, which was my main problem. Again, humor's gonna be different for everybody. So some people are going to like the fart jokes and the falling all over each other jokes. That's fine. But the problem hasn't necessarily been that people like that humor, it's that it was only that type of humor. So I'm hoping that they spread it around a little bit. There's been some clever lines and funny moments, so I'll give them credit for that so far. I do find them a little bit odd and annoying, but we'll kind of see how it happens as the series progresses. I would say that at the moment I might like them better than late Beast Morphers Ben and Betty, but not as much as early Beast Morphers Ben and Betty, if that makes any sense. So overall, I thought this was another solid episode. I would give it a 3 out of 5, but I also want to know what you guys think. I also want to say again, I'll probably mention this for a few weeks in a row, but I really like the score of this season. Each week I just really have been enjoying it, and I'm just really surprised. I mean, not only is it a breath of fresh air after like 10 years of Gnome stuff, but I really expected them to double, triple down on the mmpr-esque score since it's a Dino season and whatnot, and I'm really surprised that not only does it have a different score that gives it more of its own vibe, but that I actually really quite like it. But that's about it for this one, guys. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps, entering that bell so you can just my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.